So next on our journey is Rukia Kalanzi.
Yes, that is it.
Yay! I like when I get it right. Rukia Kalanzi is a senior program manager at an interreligious council of Uganda, which is constituted by the Roman Catholic, the Anglican of Uganda, the Orthodox Church, the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Born Again Faith, and the Pentecostal and evangelical churches. She provides technical support and guidance to senior religious leaders on country program partnership with international organizations like UNFPA, coordinates partnerships with African Council of Religious Leaders in preventing extremism and violence, represents IRCU at meetings with government and development partners, mobilizes faith-based organizations in regional agendas like the EAC Sexual Reproductive Health Bill and the UNICEF Faith in Education Joint Statement. She previously worked as a programs manager at the African Forum for Muslim Councils. A participating Muslim, she has cordial working relationships with Christian leaders and co-presents a weekly radio talk show hosted by an Anglican radio station, Nararimbe FM. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Rukia Kalanzi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, if I could just share my screen for my presentation.
Were you given?
Are you able to share?
Are you able? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm struggling. Maybe you can share from your end because I shared my. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, so like I've been introduced, I am Rukia Kalanzi, and I work at the Interreligious Council of Uganda, which for me is like a real life experience that shows coexistence and acceptance for diversity, understanding for diversity and tolerance. Interreligious Council of Uganda brings together top leaders from the different faiths as they work together to address different issues within Uganda as a country. And I really wanted to participate in this forum so that I share some of the things that we do. And I believe maybe something in there could be an example that could be useful in preventing some of these existential threats and human rights violences that could eventually lead to genocide. So I want to, next slide. So I would just briefly say, because I know most of us here, we could know the definitions of this. So just to emphasize that genocide is one-sided mass killing in which a state or any other authority intends to destroy a group, or as that group and membership is defined by the perpetrator. And then when I look at Uganda, so my point is that Uganda is experiencing some of the things that are coming off as a genocide, a risk to genocide. Yeah. So when you look at Winton's model that shows how humans or societies are predisposed to violence, like how do we get, like the presenters have been engaging us, like how do we get to this level where people lose their humanity and all of these things. So Winton shares the societal factors, and for me, as Interreligious Council, we engage on some of these factors and we see them coming to life. So there's cohesion. We have these groups that feel like, they're enclosed off, there's loyalty within the group. As we'll go along, I'll show you Uganda is ethnically diverse. We have so many tribes, and then the religious part. So there's those groups that come within that. And then when you add on the uneven distribution of resources and power, it kind of fuels it. So we have people in power, maybe ministers or in different government agencies, who will come out and say, you know, this is supposed to be a dynasty. We are supposed to be the rulers and the rest are subjects. So for us, we see such categorizations come off as, you know, a closed group, and it is so rigid. It does not see that there is need to shift. Let's look on things. Next, please. Sorry, I'm going to keep saying next. Still next, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, this is what I was saying. Then when we look at Athens as well, the three kind of communities, for me, I feel like Uganda has shown signs where we could be falling in turbulent or malignant, especially when it comes to our electoral season, when we're electing president. I think partly because we haven't had a peaceful transition of power yet. So there's that tension, you know, that kind of drives violence and abuse to one particular group. And then this other group feels like it is their right. They feel like it is originally their right to be in power. And it is, in the end, it's tagged to, you know, the tribe or to a particular group. So, and then we come to a part where a basic example I can give is people would come out to protest. Maybe, I don't know, some of you who were keeping up with our recently concluded election in 2021. So they will block a certain presidential candidate, maybe from accessing a certain community. And people come out to peacefully demonstrate. But then all these security agencies will just come up and beat and abduct and threaten, and, you know, so you see the response to one issue is to resolve conflict. We are quick to jump to, you know, to the extremes. We use violence to resolve even simple conflict. Yes. Next, please. Yes. So for me, when we look at violentization process, like I said, I feel like Uganda is on 3, because remember, I'm looking at how do we get there as a community? How do we lose our humanity? People experience and learn and see these things, so they become normal. And then the using of violence to stop violence, and then the violent engagements, you know. Next, please. Yes, same. So I want to briefly take you back to our history, because in Uganda, we've had like really some cases of violent history that, and like I've heard from the previous presenters, there's that thing that will stay in you, you know, like our people were killed. If I ever get a chance, I will do the same. So this is a review of how people could get to these extremes. So we've had the Kasese massacre, and this happened in 2016. This was a clear case of a tribal conflict between a certain tribe, between the king and the state agency. They were not okay with the king having guards on him. They thought he could use the guards to overthrow the government. So that conflict. And then the police killed so many civilians from that particular group. It's called the Banyada. So for them, it looked like it was an attack on them as a particular ethnic group. Then when you look at the Lord Resistance Army that was targeting only northern Uganda, this is a section of basically just 2 ethnic groups still. Then the same for eastern Uganda. We've had the massacres in 1971 to 79, the infamous Idi Amin. I'm sure most of you know Idi Amin. Sometimes when you travel and you say, I'm from Uganda, they're like, Idi Amin, you're like, I was not even born yet. Like, can you use something else to describe me? Anyways, and then we have the Luwero War, that is the one that brought in the current regime, the current government who's in power. Then we have the Tanzanian War as well. That happened when Idi Amin was in power. He went and provoked Tanzania. But you see, in all these wars, they've been like a target on a particular group that could, you know, keep that thing in them that it was targeting us as maybe this group, or because we have these beliefs. And yeah, next, please. And then we have the Kayunga riots. So for the Kayunga riots, that is something I can really share a story about, because I was 18 when it happened. It was still tribal. A particular king was refused to access part of his region by the police, and then his subjects retaliated, and they were targeting the tribe, people who come from the tribe of the current president, classical case of, fueling that, targeting a particular group. So just basically to show you where we are coming from, Uganda is, like I told you, we have like so many ethnic groups. And even before the colonialists coming in and then uniting us to make Uganda, we already had our grudges in there. You would see the Baganda attacking the Basoga. Most of these are neighboring each other, but we already had our issues in there. We had our tribal conflicts over maybe land, over resources, over who rules who. And then we were just made into one. And I think we are still struggling with, accepting that diversity, that culture, that psycho-culture diversity. Next, please. And then the next one is the historical religious tensions. That was also an issue in the past, especially where the Christians were not very accepting of the Muslim, and the other way, and the vice versa. Yes, please, next. So, and then I come in to share a bit of it, a bit of our experience as the Interreligious Council of Uganda and what we have done to address some of these, these tensions. So first of all, by just the existence of Interreligious Council, it is a show that we can put our differences aside, because in the past, these religions would not get along. You don't know what it means to see the leader of the Muslim faith, that is our Mufti, speaking as a Muslim, seated with the Archbishop of the Anglican Church or the leader of the Roman Catholic. And they're in this space of where they're friends. I'm privileged to work at the council, so I see this firsthand. So this just goes down through the community, and Uganda is largely a religious country with 98% of population subscribing to a particular religion. So religious leaders really still have a lot of influence, and say they can influence attitudes, they can influence, they can just come out and say, what, we're not going to do this, and people will not do it. So if they see their leader is talking to, a Christian, that breaks that, that the walls, and it creates collaboration at all levels up to community. So at Interreligious Council, I just wanted to show you briefly the structure so that you get an idea of how it works. So that what I showed previously, those are our council presidents, the head of all the denominations. So at Interreligious Council, at the Secretariat, we'll do the program oversight, the technical guidance, to move religious leaders from that traditional stewardship, I'll pray for you or what. They need to have that knowledge to address all these other societal issues. So that is our role. We resource mobilize for them, we train, that kind of like the guidance. So these are their structures. They move right from national to district to subnational to, you will find every community has a priest, has a sheikh, has, who addresses people. And along these structures, the institutions like hospitals and schools where people go to get different services, where there are all these activities, maybe youth groups, women groups that we can go through to mobilize and, and effect our programs. Next, please. So when our religious leaders started Interreligious Council, that was 2001. After 10 years of existence, they sat and reviewed what they were doing and then came up with 6 pillars of what they think Uganda should be in the next 50 years. So this falls directly under pillar 3, which is a secure and stable nation. So this is what we do briefly to contribute to peace building in Uganda. There's community social mobilization and mindset change. Like I said, we have tried to move religious leaders from the typical stewardship to, make sure when you're preaching, you put, for example, when we are going for elections, they'll do messages during the prayer, the home visits, the whatever support that target that very activity. Like, look here, the Quran says this, the Bible says this, we don't really have to attack, we're all the same, to address those issues of, diversity, the intolerance and stuff like that. So they build confidence and then they offer the social support. I think when you hear from our history, the wars we've had, people would run to churches for safety, for food. The humanitarian response is all in there. And then we have a leadership institute that I directly support. We use the Leadership Institute to build capacity of the religious leaders, the trainings, like if someone comes to you and they have this problem, what knowledge are you going to give them outside your religious norm? And then we also strengthen their system. Like I told you, they have structures from national and whatever. How do you manage your school? How do you manage your hospital? How do you, so that they have the real administrative knowledge to support whatever issue that is going to come up in society. Then we also have promoting the faith-based frameworks and partnership outside of us. Like don't close off, it's not just about religion, even if, we need to work with other people, we need to work with maybe cultural leaders, we need to work with civil society, like we need to not close off because we are just religious leaders, not because we are just the faith community. Next, please. And then we have the advocacy. This has been helpful to an extent because, like I said, religious leaders have a strong say in a country like Uganda. So if something is happening, so the Mufti, the Archbishop, they're 7, they will get up, they walk to the minister and tell him, you know what, this is too much, you can't do this, we need to sit, there are other ways of, doing things. They speak out against bad governance, the whole corruption. So there are those strategic meetings that they have, and then the long-term advocacy of, try to change, speak out to people and everything. I think there's a story that comes out in this. There's a bishop who died during Idi Amin's regime. He was the Archbishop of Uganda. He came out and spoke against the regime. Unfortunately, he was killed, but this is some of the things that the religious leaders in Uganda have come to accept, that we really have to talk, we need to say something. Like this really came out, it comes out so much in the electoral period, but they'll come out and say, no, you can't block the opposition, you need to let people talk and stuff like that. Yes, next, please. Yeah, like I wanted to share a few photos just to attach, the story, the stories, images to the story. Like the first picture, this was taken in 2021 in the recent election. This was a visit to the security minister, just to calm them down, like, because election time, there's so much targeting of the opposition. And like I said, we are so many tribes, so it eventually comes back to a tribe, you like a certain parliamentarian because it's from your region, so it looks like you're being tribalistic. So they will target the opposition, they will target the media. Another classic example is during the COVID-19 restriction, the lockdown enforcement, people would still be abducted, arrested, beaten, and tortured, So they will come out and meet the Minister of Defense, they will meet the police, you see the Archbishop, and then all these other reverends from other denominations, paying a visit to the security, like, no, this is what we think. Next, please. And then I want to share some of the milestones we are proud of at IRCU. We had our first presidential debate in 2016, and this brought together all the 18 candidates. So for people in Uganda, that was like a small hope ray of democracy. And like I said, the whole existence of multi-religious collaboration working for 20 years in Uganda, with our history, the religious tension that happened, like it's really a green light for us, and it's taken on throughout the community, then downwards. Then the national dialogue process, this was commissioned in 2018 by Interreligious Council of Uganda, and a report was issued to the president of Uganda, like looking at other ways of us, let's dialogue, let's talk about what is happening as our ethnic differences, our social expectations, like let's find a solution that is non-violent. Next, please. Yeah, then the peace building, like I shared, this is also on the, should be left, I think. Visit to the electoral commission, because it was showing unfairness, playing favoritism to the incumbent. So they pay a visit, like it's not looking good, we need to, to adjust. And then the upper one, it was a visit to the Kasese massacre, the one I mentioned. A certain king was attacked and his people killed, and trying to mediate, peace talks. And then a visit to the communities, for the humanitarian response. Go on, please. So moving forward, I know, like country as Uganda, we are not really there yet. There's still a lot that is happening, and there's still a lot we can do as the faith community. So as you have seen in my previous slide, not so many photos of women or youth came out. That is because our denominations are not really designed to include women in leadership. Yeah. And this is something we have acknowledged. So we are trying to do something about it. And as I'm talking, I was made the in charge of women and youth just beginning this month, so that we try and correct that, So we need to build on the role of women in leadership within our faith itself, within our faith institutions, and also within our work and our collaborations. Women's voices have to be heard, they have to, that visibility, and then the actual, what do they bring to the table? We can't still be living in the religious bubble we created long ago that, it's about men, and then the youth as well. As you can see below, it's our Archbishop having a training before the election with a group of youth, just to try and preach, like, can we just try and be peaceful, even if you don't agree, and then build on partnerships. Like I've been saying, we have a lot of ethnic groups. So we are still working on how can we work with cultural leaders, because we feel like we play the same role. Like Ugandans are really spiritual, but even culture, people love their kings. They listen to them, they do everything for them. So we feel like we cannot move this journey along, and then also keep on the already existing partnerships we think that are really helping. Yes, and then lastly, an issue of resource mobilization. Because we are really depending so much on the outside, and that comes with influence, you can't get money from the government and then you advocate against something like that. So we are really thinking of how to start, depending on how we can do income generation, so that we make the money that runs our programs without necessarily, getting money from outside, because it will influence your whole work. And then looking at diversity outside of religion, because Uganda, we feel like we've come a long way with that. People are more tolerant and accepting of people of other faith. But then the other diversity in political beliefs, the tribal, like I told you, it's really a big thing. We're still struggling with that other diversity, the culture, accepting we can still be brothers and sisters, but have totally different political views and support different candidates and stuff like that. Then the income redistribution, because that also kind of feeds on, like I started in my presentation. Some people feel like, oh, we're not getting in the national cake because we are from this, something like that. Yes, that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What an amazing presentation to begin to talk about that subject about leadership coming together. Which harkens back kind of to our keynote, talking about who the real beneficiaries and maybe we really need to be talking about peace too. So I thank you so much for that stunning presentation, and open up for a couple questions.
Sure.
I see hands, questions. I'm searching. Several places to search.
All right, I'll just quickly comment. It's not even a question. Thank you so much, Rukia, for your presentation. I used to work in Interfaith Peace Building Initiative in Ethiopia, so I really know firsthand how things go. And I'm so glad, I have it here as a question. Where do you guys get your funding? But you addressed it already, because I know how funding can definitely play a significant role in what you do, what you have to say sometimes, and how you do it. And sometimes you'll be thinking, oh, am I really working the work that needs to be done, or am I pleasing funders, right? So I'm so glad that you have it in your strategy to get an internal funding and keep going. And especially if the government funds it, it would have been amazing, because it's part of the government work, right? Peace building. So I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much.